Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy rainy Friday.
It's nasty outside.
I'm like over the, I know we didn't give it a chance. It's only been winter for a little while, but ever since that storm, I think everybody's ready to skip to spring.
Well, now we have all these nasty snow piles that are black and brown, and the rain is just making it worse. I'm sick of it.
I gotta say, one of my favorite parts about living in Colorado was that we were so high up that the snow used to melt the same day that it came in Denver. So we never had the dirty, the things that I grew up with in New York, the brown snow, the nasty snow.
It's awful.
The gray snow, yeah. Well, it'll be there soon come for spring.
Coming up on Rising, President Trump is warning Iran that, quote, bad things will happen if a deal is not struck within 10 days.
Plus, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vice President J.D. Vance traded some shots over Ocasio-Cortez's comments on whether the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China invaded.
And President Trump announced he would direct relevant agencies to start releasing files on aliens and UFOs. But first, Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Let's talk about it. So Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth isn't just cutting ties with Harvard University. He's signaling something much bigger, in fact, that exposure to elite civilian education is now suspect if it doesn't align ideologically with the Pentagon's leadership. Now, in a video announcing the decision to sever academic ties starting in the 2026-2027 school year, Hegseth called Harvard, quote, one of the red-hot centers of hate America activism. Here's what he claimed without any evidence.
Too many faculty members openly loathe our military. They cast our armed forces in a negative light and squelch anyone who challenges their leftist political leanings.
And Hegseth continued.
For too long, this department has sent our best and brightest officers to Harvard, hoping the university would better understand and appreciate our warrior class. Instead, too many of our officers came back looking too much like Harvard, heads full of globalist and radical ideologies that do not improve our fighting ranks.
Now he ended it with, quote, we train warriors, not wokesters. Harvard, good riddance. But let's be serious. This isn't about one university. A memo now directs the military branches to evaluate other top-tier institutions for potential bans on tuition assistance. An Army list reportedly flags 34 law schools at, quote, moderate to high risk. That includes institutions attended by leaders across the political spectrum. President Trump's alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, Vice President Vance Law School, Yale, even Hegseth himself, who attended Princeton and Harvard. So what exactly is the standard here? Because if the threshold is whether a campus leans left, that's not a national security metric. That's a political one. Rosa Brooks, a former Pentagon advisor, called the move, quote, stunningly short-sighted. Others warn it politicizes military education. Civilian graduate programs are designed to challenge assumptions on economics, technology, governance, diplomacy. That exposure isn't a substitute for war colleges, it complements them. If we believe our officers are strong enough to lead in combat, are we really arguing that they're too fragile to sit in a seminar and distinguish opinion from fact? There's also a strategic cost. Tuition assistance at places like Harvard, MIT, or Georgetown is a recruitment and retention tool. As Scott Peoples of Veterans for Responsible Leadership put it, limiting those options could hurt both. When officers leave service, those degrees help them transition. Taking that away doesn't just send a message to universities, it sends one to the members of the military. And then there's a precedent thing. Once you start blacklisting institutions based on perceived politics, you open the door for the next administration to do the same exact thing, just in the opposite direction. Professional military education becomes a partisan football instead of a long-term investment in leadership. Now, we should want officers who can navigate complexity, challenge assumptions, and understand a world that doesn't think in lockstep. Restricting where they can learn because of ideological grievances doesn't strengthen the military, it narrows it. If our national defense depends on intellectual insulation rather than intellectual rigor, we have a much bigger problem than any campus can create.
All right, so interesting topic here. I think I feel sort of that I could make the argument for both sides. I definitely understand the argument that for members of the military who want to get a graduate degree or a law degree at one of these so-called elite institutions, that sets them up for success when they leave the military, because for better or for worse, having the name Harvard attached to your resume is incredibly helpful for getting jobs. But on the other hand, we have seen over the past 2 decades, I would say, that a lot of the so-called elite institutions have actually moved away from intellectual diversity and academic rigor that we would expect of them. And Georgetown included. I went to Georgetown. I can speak firsthand about some of the things that I experienced there. It's definitely not a campus that is super keen on ideological diversity. But on the Harvard point, I was listening to an interview yesterday with a Harvard professor who teaches in the history department. And he was talking about how as early in the early 1990s, they started this push to bring in faculty based on diversity requirements rather than based on their resumes, their body of scholarship. Over time, Harvard has also really increased grade inflation, where basically everybody who goes through their programs gets an A because they want to be able to say in their statistics, you know, if all of our students have these massive GPAs, they're doing fantastic, don't worry about it. And he also pointed out that only 3% of Harvard faculty in 2021 identified as politically conservative. And so I do have issues with the federal government giving reimbursements for tuition, whether in the military or outside of it, to universities that are not making a concerted effort to make sure that their professors, that their students are receiving some level of intellectual diversity.
I think this the claim that he's making that, you know, because you go to Harvard, you're automatically persuaded is the part that bothers me, like wanting to pull funding. Because I think that what you want to do is retain people that are interested in the military. What you want to do is provide a pathway for them to have a career after they leave out of the military. So we're hearing less and less of those stories about people who leave the military and the worst case scenario or end up homeless, or the best case scenario don't know what to do with themselves. They have an entire degree further their studies and figure out what exactly they're interested in aside from fighting for our country. And I think with Harvard Law School, it has one of the most active chapters of the Federalist Society, which is a prominent, as you probably know, but if our audience doesn't know, influential organization that is really a place for conservatives and libertarians. And that's one of the most active chapters. Harvard was actually prominent in starting that organization on campus, one of the first colleges. So when you think about the fact that there's a lot to offer at colleges, and the whole point is to push boundaries and nuance and thought and ideologies, but then also there's this layer of learning from the top and the best in many programs when it comes down to AI, technology, and like MIT is one of the schools that we're talking about. Like you're learning the best of the best from the brightest that end up in the most high-paying positions in and out of our government. Don't you want people working within our government to be the best and the brightest? And don't you want to give them that same opportunity and almost create like an incentive that if you come to the military, you also have this broad opportunity to be all you can be, which is the slogan, right?
Yeah, and I guess the counterpoint to that is Harvard the best and the brightest anymore? Or is it just a credential at this point? Is it you get the Harvard degree and people assume that you're the best and the brightest, but is the coursework actually leading to that outcome? And the Federalist Society was created on a lot of college campuses as a counter to the fact that the classes and the professors that were being taken at these universities were so liberal compared to conservative that it was sort of a safe space, extracurricular for students who were conservative legal scholars or lawyers, studying lawyers, to be able to have that community. The other final thing that I would point out is that Harvard and a lot of these other institutions get a lot of foreign funding. Harvard is the university that actually receives the most foreign funding out of any college in the United States, and that includes from places like China. Georgetown University has a satellite campus in Qatar. So that's another thing when it relates to national security in the military that I think the Department of War should be considering when they're deciding where to send their students to go learn.
And it just opens the bigger conversation that this could also happen on the other side when a Democrat's president, to just say we're going to pick out certain schools we don't want people going to, even though there's probably less of them amongst that are considered liberal versus conservative. Nobody wants that to happen either. So it opens this endless door of ping pong with people who just want to further their education.
All right, we'll keep talking about it. Up next, amid tensions with Iran, Representative Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie plan to force a war powers vote. We'll be right back.